during interrogation, they kept pressing me. They were saying, you know that you were helping terrorists. Look, man, my boat was pretty much all baby formula. And this man says, fine, future terrorist. Hey, mother skunk.
Thinking, hey, this is a one-way trip, literally into a war zone. How do you mentally prepare for that?
We got boarded by Shiite 13. What I've been told is that you don't get into Shiite 13 unless you've already killed people.
Greta Thunberg was a part of this mission.
They set her down in front of an Israeli flag that was blowing in the wind. And anytime the flag would touch her, they would kick her. Ben Gvir, if you don't know, is a proper war criminal, talking about how we were terrorists who had come to murder Jewish babies. He only got that first sentence out before we all started chanting Free Palestine, and it just wasn't the media moment that he was wanting. So he stormed off, and then the cops came in and they started beating people. The Israelis pissed on a lot of the supplies. They killed 10 activists. The Israeli forces executed 10 people.
Oh my God.
You're too inquisitive.
You're so nosy. Stop minding my business.
Today's guest has made headlines recently after bravely sailing to Gaza to deliver aid, but unfortunately was detained and endured torture from Israeli soldiers. Introducing Captain Dane Hunter. Welcome to the show, Dane.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right, man. So you've had quite the journey recently, what some people might even consider a nightmare, but it was for an amazing cause. And I just wanted to talk to you and just get to know what your experience was like and why you decided to take up this cause. Firstly, let's start with the why.
Yeah, for sure. Funny enough, that was the last question that they asked in the sort of interview stage to join this mission. There were 138,000 people who applied to go on this mission. I was one of the last brought on board. Just a friend who was already on it told me that they needed more sailors and sent me a phone number to call. So I spoke with them. And yeah, they asked me, why would you want to try and cross the Mediterranean in order to go into a war zone? Try and help a bunch of people that you have not met. And I told them that I didn't really feel like I had a choice. Like I had a skill set that they told me could be useful. So at that point, it's like, okay, yeah, when do we start? I mean, I'd been following along probably about the past like 6 or 7 years, what's been going on in Palestine. I have a few Palestinian friends in the Virgin Islands and the BVI and USVI. And then I also lived in New York after Irma. And so I have Palestinian friends out in New York City as well. And yeah, I mean, growing up in the BVI, we're kind of isolated to a lot of these world events. But as soon as you meet somebody who's from a place which is currently, I mean, it has been suffering for decades now, this apartheid state. And then, it really just takes a little bit of looking into it to very quickly see kind of, what side is right and what side's wrong. And while I was living in New York, I got more involved in protesting. And yeah, I think first time I was arrested out here was like 2023 at Macy's Thanksgiving Day march that we shut down in the streets to try and bring awareness for Palestine. And then, of course, after October 7th, that's when things really escalated with the genocide going on. And so now you have a man-made famine and you have children starving to death. And I think whatever people feel politically, I would hope that we could at least agree that children shouldn't starve to death.
Correct.
So that was the point of the mission, was to bring humanitarian aid into Gaza. We were in international waters the whole time. It was a sanctioned humanitarian mission. We didn't break any laws whatsoever. And that was very important to the organization to make sure everything stayed above board. The Israeli blockade is illegal based on the International Criminal Courts and based on the UN. It's against the Geneva Codes to starve a civilian population. It's against the Geneva Conventions to have collective punishment for a population. And it is against the Geneva Convention to stop aid from entering into a country. So it was illegal for the Israelis to stop our mission. Our mission was completely legal. We
Yeah.
never voluntarily entered Israeli waters. We were in international waters and on our way to Palestinian territorial waters before we were illegally kidnapped and brought in.
So can you give me a little bit of details about the mission itself? When did you guys actually start? Where did you set sail from? What type of aid were you carrying? How long was the journey? Things like that.
Yeah, so our ships furthest away started in Barcelona. And they started about the 25th of August. And then we had other fleets in Tunisia, in Sicily, in Greece, and in Turkey, who were all coming down to meet at different points. I was one of the captains in the Italian fleet. So I flew into Sicily on the very tail end of August, start of September, and worked for about 2 weeks just fixing these boats up before we started the journey.
What
So
what kind of boats were you guys sailing?
we were on all kinds of boats. I mean, big, small, motorboat, sailboat. The only common denominator is that they were fixer-upper boats. Every boat, I mean, like thankfully we had lots of donations, not just money-wise, but sometimes boats themselves were donated. But nobody's going to be donating their, $5 million yachts. So
Yeah.
my boat, a 2005 Bavaria 47, great boat, fantastic boat, but hadn't really gotten much love or attention since probably 2010. So
Mm.
definitely needed some effort put into it. And sometimes, I mean, because we were really on the clock trying to get everything going as quickly as possible. And so sometimes me and the other mechanics would look at each other and be like, I mean, it's a one-way trip, get the zip tie, get the tape. So yeah, rough boats. And in terms of the aid that we were carrying, it was all vetted by a third-party organization, which they're not the Red Cross, but they do similar type things of feeding starving people. And so they gave us a lot of insight on the best sorts of things to bring. My ship in particular, it was mostly baby formula and hygiene products, paper towel, soap, all that type of stuff. And then we also had a lot of like canned goods, dry goods, pastas and things like that. A lot of not just clean water, but water filters as well. And yeah, I mean we filled the boat. We went off of the manufacturer's limits for weight capacity, and then we hit that capacity. So we were carrying as much as possible. Yeah. We filled our showers with it because we weren't going to be showering anyway. Yeah, every other nook and cranny.
So how long was the estimated journey?
Right. So the journey itself, it's about 2 weeks of sailing. If it was just one boat going as fast as possible, it would have been quicker. Probably could have been like 8 days. But one of the things is we had to stick to formation. And with all these different boats, different sizes, different motors, it meant that we basically had to go at the speed of kind of the lowest common denominator. So we were averaging about 4.5 knots, which, as
Wow.
most people listening will know, the BVI is not fast at all. It's pretty much a rowboat at that point.
Yeah.
So very slow going, but also all these boats were heavily weighed down with aid. And we had to make a stop as well after we were attacked. We had to do some repairs. So overall, I mean, the trip took 6 weeks for those 6 weeks on the sea for those who left Barcelona, 6 weeks for us as well coming from Sicily, but 2 of those weeks were spent near coastal Italy doing trainings and repairs, and then yeah, a month of just being on the ocean.
That's a long time. Roughly how many boats were there in the in total?
In the end, I think we had about 42, 43. That was after, yeah, we met up with the Greek and the Turkish ships as well. Yeah.
How many people pretty much is like manning per boat?
Really depends on the boat. My boat had a crew of 10, so myself and 9 others, and everybody on board my ship was crew. Everybody else, they came for a different reason. We had doctors, journalists, and social media people. We had a humanitarian clown on my boat. We had a musician from the States. But everybody, as soon as they got on board the ship, was crew. So everybody was learning to sail. By the end, I mean, everybody was, a proper sailor after 1,200 nautical miles. And yeah, I mean, some boats only had 4 or 5 people on board. And out of them, only 2 or 3 of them knew how to sail the boat, and the others weren't so keen on it. Other boats, like the family in the Alma, had something like 45, 50 people on board. So overall, the mission had just over 500 people participating in the direct action, like in the boats. And I think we had like just over 2,000 people total in terms of like support roles and organizational stuff on the ground. But again, I mean, we had, yeah, 138,000 people who were wanting to do the mission. So it was definitely, no lack of manpower for sure.
With a mission like this, I mean, earlier you said when you were repairing the boats, you're kind of thinking, hey, this is a one-way trip. What's your thought process like going into this one-way trip into war, like literally into a war zone at sea for over a month? How do you mentally prepare for that?
That's a good question. I mean, I feel like taking it sort of step by step, right? I feel confidence comes from repetition. So if you're confident that you can drive a car, it's because you've done that. If you're confident that your friends can pick you up from the airport, it's because they've done that or they've done similar enough time. Confidence, if you're feeling confident but you don't have those receipts, that's just arrogant, right? So if you're going into a new situation, you either go into it with arrogance or with nervousness. Now there's a trick though, which is you don't have to necessarily hold all those cards yourself to have that confidence. You can be confident in all those people around you. So I encouraged my crew because at the start, none of my crew were sailors. Um, and I told them that it was completely right that they should be feeling nervous because I'd much rather have them feeling nervous over feeling
Arrogant.
arrogant. Exactly. And so I mentioned though that, they can be confident um, in the boat. Like I'll show them, how the motor works, and then they can feel that confidence in the motor. We did test sails. That way we were confident in our rigging. And for myself personally, I've sailed, I don't know, a little over 20, probably closer to 30,000 nautical miles now. I've crossed the Atlantic in a 43-foot boat. And I didn't just jump straight into that from nothing. I was sailing around the bitter end when I was like 5 years old. So it's all these kind of small steps that build up. You go from the Hobie Cat to a, 30-foot monohull, and you just kind of keep moving up. You keep sailing a little bit further and further. And it was the exact same with this journey, where we built our confidence up in the boat, we built our confidence up in the team, and then at some point, anytime you're going out into the ocean, you have to recognize that you're not going to be in control of everything. I think that's why sailors are so superstitious, is because at the end of the day, like you are still taking a risk.
Yeah.
What's the saying? A ship is safest in port, but a ship isn't built for port.
Yeah.
So you do eventually have to just kind of roll the dice.
But okay, so there's a difference though in being confident in your sailing abilities because you've sailed all these other places before, and then having to sail into a literal war zone. What do you tell yourself? Like, you're not going to a happy place currently, or else you wouldn't be needing to go anyways. So how do you prepare for that specifically?
Yeah. So specifically looking at that, one of which is we did a lot of training, not related just to sailing, but we did a lot of non-violence training. We did a lot of de-escalation training. We studied flotillas of the past. I mean, a lot of people don't know about the Mavi Marmara, which was one of the early on flotillas to try and bring aid into Gaza back in 2010, and they killed 10 activists. The
Wow.
Israeli forces executed 10 people. So we took, a lot of lessons from that. One thing is like, for instance, before we got close to those dangerous waters, we chucked all the cooking utensils, knives, like kitchen knives, everything like that, got it off the boat. Just we didn't leave anything on board the boat that could be construed or misconstrued as a potential weapon. By the time they were boarding our boat, everybody's wearing a life jacket, everybody has their hands up, and we just basically follow instructions from that point. Of course, like no throwing things at them, no escalation of any type, because a lot of them, a lot of how they operate is these guys are amped up on amphetamines and they're coming on and they're aggressive and they are trained to kill you. My boat in particular, like we got boarded by Chiete 13, which is their version of Navy SEALs. What I've been told is that you don't get into Chiete 13 unless you've already killed people. So, these are like properly dangerous folks. In the middle of the night, they're also, some of them are on edge because all the propaganda while we're heading in there is saying that we're terrorists.
Mm.
So we don't know what their mentality is when they're coming onto our boat. So there is always going to be that unknown, but we basically prepared as much as we could. And then what kind of kept us going was just knowing what was going on in Palestine. I remember we had a vote when we were getting ready to leave because the weather was bad. And there were some people asking for us to delay for a day and just leave the next day. And myself and others were saying, absolutely not. Like, yeah, it's a storm, but, if we can reach Gaza one day sooner, like, just picture the families of all those people murdered by these bombs and these missiles and drones. Like, if we were in that kind of situation, picturing our small country under siege, we would want the rest of the world to come help us. And we wouldn't want them to delay because of a bit of weather. So we kind
Yeah.
of brought up that point. And yeah, I mean, it was definitely dangerous. Even just going out in that sea can be dangerous. But it was, there was certain death going on every single day in Gaza, in the West Bank, Palestine. So it, kind of just felt like we had to do it.
So one of the most famous people that was a part of this mission is Greta Thunberg. I'm not sure if I pronounced her name properly, but did you get to meet her?
Yeah, so my boat, we were terrific with conserving our water. We were terrific with making our rations last. However, we were nearly out of cigarettes when it was coming to the last few days of the trip. We were basically just sharing one cigarette for the three of us who were smoking each night. And then the Alma, who was our flagship, one of them texted like, "Hey, we have extra cigarettes, if you guys need." And we were like, "Let's go." And so we sailed up right alongside them, and Greta comes out, and Greta's waving at us. She's like, "Are you here for the cigarettes?" We're like, "Yeah." She's like, "Wait, we have more for you." And they threw a line over to our boat. We tied on, and they sent this whole care package, which had like flour and apples and like a deck of cards and loads of cigarettes from the Turkish Navy. Um, so that was kind of my first interaction. She was also good friends with a couple of the people who were on my boat, knowing each other from protesting in Switzerland and Germany. And so yeah, they just had a quick catch-up conversation by shouting, across the boats, across the waves. And then I didn't see her again until we were all in Ashdod for processing, and the Israeli soldiers, like, were parading her around, and they set her down in front of an Israeli flag that was blowing in the wind. And anytime the flag would touch her, they would kick her and tell her not
Wow.
to touch the flag. And she, the whole time, just kept a straight face, basically just expressionless, like she was not letting them get to her. I then saw her again in prison when they took us out to speak to our consulate, which I can mention later. But yeah, one of the women who was out there meeting with their consulate was not having a good time, kicked over a trash bin, was screaming at the guards, and then the guards took her off. And Greta came over and picked up the trash bin and kind of waved at us and just kept, walked back into the prison. And yeah, I mean, like completely unfazed. Like, this is, I don't know, her third or fourth flotilla. Yeah, no, she's a badass.
Wow, that's amazing. So since you guys were picked up and pretty much intercepted. Did the supplies ever make it to the Gaza Strip or no?
No. Our supplies, a lot of them were just dumped. Some straight into the ocean, some once we got back to Ashdod. The Israelis pissed on a lot of the supplies. And I think it's also worth noting that there's not currently a lack of supplies. There are trucks outside the gates of Gaza sitting with food in them. Thousands of trucks from the UN, and Israel lets in like 70 a day. I think Human Rights Watch said that we need at least 400, 500 every day going in order to start fighting the starvation going on. But they mostly got rid of the aid. I also, during interrogation, they kept pressing me. They were saying, you know that you were helping terrorists. You know that you were helping terrorists. And I said, look, man, my boat was pretty much all baby formula. And this man says, fine, future terrorist. You mother skunk fucking, I didn't even, like, you can't fix that, you know?
Yeah, that's crazy. That's
Like
actually insane.
him calling a baby a future terrorist, I'm like, this is no debate anymore. Like, at that point, you know, like, fucking, how am I gonna convince somebody that, like, a baby should eat? But
Yeah,
it's just been fucking decades of propaganda.
that's so unfortunate. So, okay, can you walk me through, so after you guys are picked up, they board your boat and they bring you back. What happens first? Like, walk me through the step by step.
Yeah, so, well, getting picked up, first of all, they were trying to catch us for a minute. It took them something like 18 hours to grab all of us.
Wow.
Yeah, we were just kind of dodging and weaving for a bit. They had these boats with massive water cannons trying to stop our ships. Several times they would drive a frigate right up in front of my boat, have a spotlight on us, have guys with rifles point at us, and through a megaphone, they would be telling us to stop our ship. But the thing is, if you choose as the captain to power down or to follow them, then technically they have not illegally intercepted you. If they just
Yeah.
convince you with their words, then there is no illegal intercept. So they have to be the ones to change the course of your boat, change the speed of your boat, and then now your boat has illegally been seized. And that was part of our strategy because we knew that this was a possibility or, you know, the probability. And so we're now working on the legal side, kind of behind the scenes. But yeah, several times they would pull their frigate up in front of me, be shouting at me to stop the boat, pointing guns, and we just had to play chicken with them. We just had to keep going and trust that they would move, and they did. But then eventually they pulled a rib up alongside us and boarded the boat. We all had green laser sights on us. Immediately they told us all to shut our eyes. And then we heard them methodically go around, tear off the Starlink, tear off the camera. They, yeah, raided the whole inside of the ship, looked for everything. And then they came back upstairs, and their first question was, who's the captain? And I'll just kept our fucking mouths shut. And they said again, okay, keep your eyes closed, put your hand down if you're not the captain. And so my eyes are just fucking closed, and I hear them walk up behind me. And then the guy says, I said, put your hands down if you are not the captain. I'm just waiting there for a minute. And he says, oh, so you're all the captain? And then they all start cocking their guns, and he's like, you think this is funny? And we're just fucking sitting there, dude. And yeah, then after, God, what felt like 10 minutes was probably only 30 seconds, he just said, okay, we'll find him later. And then they walked off and they started driving our boat. They herded us all downstairs, zip tied us. And then, yeah, it took us back to Ashdod. And once we got there, the cops were extremely rough. You know, they dragged us off the boats, threw us onto the concrete. We sat there for fucking hours while they arranged everybody in these neat rows. And then Ben Gavir came out. Ben Gavir, if you don't know, is a proper war criminal. There are warrants out for him from the International ICJ and the ICC, International Criminal Courts, and International whatever the other one is. And so basically not a guy who you necessarily want to see, especially when he's coming with a media team. And he started off talking about how we were terrorists who had come to murder Jewish babies and they had caught us. And he only got pretty much that first sentence out before we all started shouting him down, chanting "Free Palestine." And he left in a huff because he he was trying to shout over us, and it just wasn't the media moment that he was wanting. So he stormed off, and then the cops came in and they started beating people.
Wow.
Fucking just yeah, nightclubs. You know, they put our zip ties tighter. Yeah, basically just like, you know, forced us onto the ground, feet on our back. A couple of my buddies still have bruises on their ribs and black eyes and shit. And keep in mind, this is before any sort of due process. This is before any sort of criminal hearing. Already we hadn't done anything illegal, but what they were trying to claim, of course, is that we entered Israeli waters without permission. That's like technically the law that they're going at. In reality, they don't like the fact that we're trying to help Palestine.
Yeah.
So then going through processing, they were just taking random shit from our bags, throwing them away. You know, took all my jewelry, tossed that. We knew that probably most things we wouldn't get back. My guitar, Carsey and I, she was the musician who was on my boat. Before we were intercepted, we were playing some music and we just chucked our guitars in the ocean because we knew that they would have taken them from us anyway. But yeah, so everything got seized. They then, basically tried to force us to sign some papers that would say that we had illegally come in and that we were confessing and would self-deport. Obviously, we didn't sign those papers. We had gone through all of that in the legal training that we did before the mission. And yeah, then they put us in proper handcuffs, ankle cuffs, put us in a prison bus, blasted the air conditioning on it, and took us about 4 hours into the Negev desert. And
Wow.
there in the desert, they put everybody into a cage where, you know, standing room only for hours. Dragged us in to have a strip search, weigh us and measure us, and then yeah, put us in our prison clothes. Which even that, like, these guys are so fucking petty, dude. Like they gave me fucking little old me, like double XL fucking, you know, shirt and jogger. They gave my boy Sonder, who's like 6'4", a fucking small. Like there's just nothing too petty for him. And oh, and my boy Hamish. Hamish is a black gentleman from Australia, dreadlock. When I eventually ran into him in the prison, he was like, "Hey, did they make you guys strip?" And we were like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Okay, but did they make you dance like a monkey?" And we're like, "They fucking what?" He's like, "Yeah, they told me to dance like a monkey." We were like, "These guys, like, they're going for fucking evil bingo, dude. Like,
Yeah.
they're racist motherfuckers. They're obviously committing a genocide." But it's like, yeah, it's this want to exert power, you know? It just
Yeah.
comes from this entitlement. And I mean, a lot of the guards were Arabic, and they were being racist to all of our Arabic comrades. And because they were Zionist first, you know?
Mm.
Even if they were speaking Arabic, even if a lot of them were from occupied Palestine, they were fully on board with this Zionist cause to, you know, to take all the land. And like, it was just very clear and apparent how much brainwashing there was. And racism and all of that in general comes from brainwashing, you know, like you
Yeah.
have to teach discrimination, you have to teach hate. It's not a natural thing for us to feel.
Yeah.
But it was just, you know, it was so very apparent in that prison. And it was a proper high security torture prison for what they consider terrorists. All of the Palestinians that they picked up from Gaza after October 7th were brought to Kitzbühel. And so these guards were, you know, some of the most heinous people around. And they were entirely confused by our group because I don't think they were expecting the pushback that we were giving them. I mean, like we knew that we were there with the eyes of the world on us, and we knew that we had governments who were being pressured by people to bring us home. And so we also knew that we had a lot more privilege than all the Palestinians who were in that prison. Um, so, we never got lawyers. We never got phone calls. We never got showers. They stopped serving food at one point because many people like myself were on hunger strike, which is collective punishment. There were several beatings. I got thrown into isolation twice. Um, and that's with, you know, this male body, this white skin, this US passport. So like, just picture what they're doing to the Palestinians in there. And there are over 400 kids too, like kids.
Wow.
One person I'd love to bring up is Muhammad Ibrahim. Muhammad Ibrahim, everybody should do their research on this guy, and especially Virgin Islanders who have relatives in Florida. Have them call all your reps because Muhammad Ibrahim is a 16-year-old boy from Florida, born and raised in Florida, U.S. passport, who was taken from his family's home while he was visiting in the West Bank 8 months ago. He was 15 years old. He got stolen by Israeli soldiers from his home, thrown into a prison. He has been held in a similar maximum security torture prison for 8 months, had his birthday there, and has no charges currently. And he's a U.S.
That's
citizen from
terrible.
Florida. Yeah, Muhammad Ibrahim. Yeah, everybody's got to be outraged over this boy. Like I don't think we would have properly come back if it wasn't for all of the support and the public outrage that we had from our communities. And I mean that was kind of the point of this mission was to take those communities that we had and force them to come with us by, telling our friends and family like, okay, maybe you don't care about this issue, but I know you care about me, so I'm gonna put
Yeah,
myself in this issue, and now you care about it. So
correct.
we have to keep that same political capital. We have to keep that same momentum, and we have to call out all of these injustices. They gotta bring Muhammad Ibrahim back to Florida. They have to release the 11,000 hostages that they hold, including the 400 children. They got to release all of the bodies that they have illegally been holding on to of Palestinians. And they have to actually acknowledge the fucking ceasefire because I believe they have murdered another 400 Palestinians since the
Wow.
ceasefire went into effect,
I wasn't aware of
including
that.
today. Yep, yep, including today, there were 6 people murdered in the West Bank by settler violence, by these Zionist settlers coming in, stealing olives during the olive harvest right now. And they were backed by IOF soldiers. So IOF soldiers were protecting these Israeli settlers who were stealing olives, torching farms, and murdering Palestinian farmers.
Do you think that the BVI specifically, do you think we care enough about these global issues and conflict?
Honestly, no. I feel like we don't really care until the thing affects us.
Yeah.
Some people know the saying, America sneeze, we catch a cold.
Yeah.
Like 2008, the US has their financial hit, which means for us, then in 2009, we have that hit to our tourism.
Yeah.
So, or for instance, we have all these billionaires and these oligarchs killing our planet, and then we have a record-breaking storm like Irma, who then only holds that record for 2 weeks before Maria comes and breaks that record. And then we
Uh-huh.
start thinking about climate change. So I feel like we're a little bit delayed in our response to these things. Part of it is like we feel like we're a small country. We feel like we don't have much sway on things. And we're colonized. So in general, we don't have a lot of sway on things. I know maybe it's anecdotal, but I know most BV Islanders would love to legalize weed and make revenue on that. But
It's true.
The UK then says no. A lot of people argue that like we need tourism, and I agree we do need tourism. But why do we need tourism? You know, we're
Yeah,
put into this bind by neocolonialism. We're
correct.
forced to need this revenue. That's by design. And I think in the Virgin Islands, we need to start looking at where our global solidarity lies. Places like Palestine, what you see is there's this global superpower, right? Israel is fully backed by the US empire. And you have these Western interests in the region. They want Palestine for the land, for the natural resources,
Yeah.
and they feel entitled to it, and they're not used to hearing no. Entitlement is just power unquestioned. And so if somebody's saying, oh, this is mine, this is my birthright, this is what I'm meant to have, and then you question that, you say, is this your land? Are you meant to have this? They take that as a threat. And so Palestine is a threat to Western civilization. It's a threat to global capitalism. It's a threat to empire because it's resistance. It's resistance to that want of that empire. We don't resist a ton in the BVI. We do resist in the Caribbean a bit. Yeah, we have some good history of that in Grenada and
Cuba.
independence, Cuba, Haiti, the revolts in St. John that really sparked everything. So we have had some history of that. In Tortola alone, Roadtown got burned down because of protests.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, in
So
East End was
in
like the
East End,
first
exactly,
free.
Long Look.
Yeah, Long Look. Yep.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I feel owe it kind of to our history, to our heritage, to kind of look around, ask ourselves like what is right and wrong? What do we want to stand up for? And I mean, right now we have empire attacking our neighbors over in Venezuela.
Yeah, I
They're
was
in the
gonna bring that up
Caribbean.
next.
Yeah, and man, they getting bombed by fucking US drones.
Mm-hmm.
And like who should we expect to be speaking out for this? That's our neighbors over there. And if they were bombing us, we'd want people to be saying, what the fuck,
Yeah,
basically.
exactly.
What's going on? What are you trying to do?
But also, it's a slippery slope because where they are from Venezuela, like that Trinidad area, that's not too far from here. That's a 2-hour flight.
Exactly. Exactly.
What do you think we can do to get more people involved in bringing awareness to these types of situations and get the conversation going, but also volunteering and helping?
Yeah, great question. So first off, the main thing that makes this world turn, unfortunately, right now at the moment is money. And so your loudest vote that you can cast is with your wallet. And so it costs a lot of money for us to import goods. We import goods because there's demand for goods. With just a little bit of research, you can find products which are currently funding the genocide. So, I mean, like, for instance, Nestle is one of the worst companies out there. They do all kinds of heinous shit. They're fucking up the Congo right now. They're fucking up Sudan. They're fucking up Palestine. They're funding the Zionist regime. And many other many other companies, unfortunately, like that, Coca-Cola and shit. And so, which I think is actually owned by Nestle. But anyway, with the right research, I forget the name of the app, but I'm sure we can discuss after. You can put a link in there. It lists out everything that's boycott, and boycotts work. That's why the powers that be try and convince us that they are ineffective. It's because they work.
Correct.
And so if we were on a small scale, I mean, I'm not telling anybody to do this, but one of my shipmates, our nurse, she was from Ireland. She's 64 years old. And in her little community in Ireland, she got three of her friends together and they went to the local supermarket and they filled their carts up with all of these boycott goods from Israel. And then they basically went to pay and they told the cashier, like, actually, I don't have any money. And the cashier's like, why are you causing all this trouble? And then she starts to explain, you see, this good here, this is funding this weapons manufacturer who's dropping bombs on Israel. This one right here. And she was walking it through with her. And it was, a bit of a publicity stunt, but it worked. That little supermarket in that little town then agreed to no longer accept imports from these companies that were funding the genocide. And then that news spread around Ireland. So I think it only serves the interests of the powerful for us to think that we don't have power.
Correct.
You never know what your impact is going to be. You can't control your impact. All you can control are your intentions. And so if you check in with yourself and you check what your intentions are, you check what side of history you want to be on. Because I firmly believe, man, like coming up, our children, they're going to be asking what we were doing during this time. And it's not
Yeah.
going to be an excuse to say, oh, well, I was thousands of miles away, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
My daughter already asked. My 5-year-old already asked. She asks frequently if there's a ceasefire.
man,
She can't say it properly. She calls it a sea spider.
a sea spider.
Yeah, because she doesn't like to see the babies and everything, and she
Yeah,
looks at her little sister and she looks at the babies and she's like, "Wow, even the little sisters and the big sisters are in this war," and it makes her so
yeah,
sad, and she asks
yeah.
all the time about it.
Yeah, no, and I feel like I mean kids got the least corrupted moral compass there is, you know. You ask any child if you say to them, you know, oh, there are children over here and they're starving and we have food for them, but these people don't want them to have that food. Ask her who the bad guy is, you know? Like it's
Exactly.
a very
Yeah.
simple problem.
Yeah.
But the thing is, we also become the bad guy with our complicity because
Yes.
one of the next questions is, well, what can we do? What are you doing? What did you do? And so I think it serves our own moral interests as a community to be able to say, we did our best, we tried, we helped in all the ways that we could think of. I was in DC a couple days ago advocating for the Stop the Bombs Act to try and get people to sign on with that. It limits offensive weapons going to Israel, these bunker buster bombs, like big munitions like that. It's a small step, but necessary. And I stopped by Stacy Plaskett's office. She was out. I will say, you know, I didn't write her ahead of time. It was just a walk-in. And with the government shutdown, you know, a lot of things are moving at a slow pace. But I was able to speak to her foreign affairs advisor. And I was able to let them know, you know, I'm from the Virgin Islands. I had lived on St. Thomas for a long time. And I've been getting a lot of feedback from people and as soon as I mentioned too, I was like, yeah, you know, I just kind of wanted to know where Stacy stood because I'm going to be on a couple VI podcasts and things. And as soon as I mentioned that, you know, they were like, oh yeah, no, like we'll get back to you on that. We'll get back to you on that. Because you got to hold these elected people, you know, accountable. Because a lot of people they'll say, you know, that they're against certain things, but then they don't sign on to bills. Um, I'm hoping she signs onto it. At this stage, I don't know if she has yet, but we make decisions with our voting. The UK is equally complicit to the US in this genocide. They send weapons, they send funding, and so we have to look for whatever leverage we can. It's maybe less effective in the BVI for us to actually like block streets off, you know, but
Yeah.
speaking to our local grocers about what goods they're bringing in, speaking, I mean, honestly, just looking at how we can make sure tourists are aware. But
Hmm.
if anybody wants to do an effective demonstration, go down to Pier Park, you know? Because if you want to affect the empire, a lot of these people trying to turn their attention away, you know, when they're going on holiday, they want to be relaxed in the Caribbean. They don't want to think about what's going on in the world. It's on us to bring people's attention back, you know? Something that I think about a lot is if you stub your toe right, immediately, you know, you weren't thinking about your toe before, and now all of your attention is there. Pain is always your attention getting pulled to a specific point on your body. Pain in like a societal sense though, that it's the same thing. It's that call of attention. And cause if you were to mash up your foot, if you broke your ankle, then you would need to put it in a cast or something. You would need to give it attention for it to heal. If you kept looking
Correct.
away from it and you kept walking on it, it's just going to get worse. And so protesting in general, it's making a society uncomfortable because it's taking their attention. It's saying, look at this, you know? And people don't want to look at starving children. They don't want to look at blown up, you know? I get that. But we're not going to be able to fix this thing unless we look at it.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same thing for looking at our history. You know, like the US is not going to heal until they look at the fact that they were built by enslaving people and that they have not put in any effort to make amends for that, you know? If somebody just say they're sorry, kind of not really anything. I feel like a real
Yeah.
apology, you need steps behind it. You need to take actions.
Yeah.
And so we need to, as a country, start demanding certain things from our colonizers, from the UK, and we need to start using the leverage that we have in order to try and affect change as much as possible. I mean, we're a playground for billionaires. We got Bezos and them guys down all the time. We
Yeah.
could definitely, we are a creative group in the Caribbean. We could figure out actions where when we have people like that down there, we can get their attention. And we might be small, but man, we powerful. Like, I don't know if you read the Panama Papers, which is, the papers that were put out by these journalists connecting all the dots of all this international money that's being hidden.
Yeah.
Tortola is mentioned a
I've
lot
skimmed
more
it.
than Panama.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It's mentioned a
Um,
lot.
it's mentioned a lot. And one of the tools of an empire is to keep those inner circles complacent. That way they can, do all this crazy heinous shit to the colonies further away. We're fairly close, to empire. We're fairly close. We're on the US dollar. We're largely placated. We're largely kept just happy enough to not cause trouble. But
Barely.
yeah, but we have to kind of decide when enough is enough because people will treat you the way that you teach them to treat you. And
Yes.
so if we allow, all this cost of living to keep going up and we're all working all the time down there, our minimum wage is stagnant. Our government doesn't offer any kind of, transportation between islands. Like there are a lot of issues, our healthcare, we do the best with what we got, but our energy source, the fact that we're still running on a fucking diesel generator out Pacoit Pond, like there are a lot of local issues that we could look at. I feel oftentimes we feel complacent. We don't want to stir up trouble and very peaceful, but being quiet isn't necessarily being peaceful. So a couple years ago, I flew down to Guadeloupe to pick up a boat. It was meant to be a really quick job. Fly in, get the boat, sail back to Tortola. Easy. While I'm in Antigua at the airport, I get a text on my phone saying, as some of you may be aware of the ongoing political situation developing in Guadeloupe, there is now a curfew in effect. I'm like, the what? Like, I gotta start Googling places before I go, man. But
Yeah.
anyway, I get down there. Energy workers had shut off power to the entire island. Dock workers they were unionized. They were not going to the docks. So my boat was just sitting on the hard for like 6 days. Became a very long job for this company. But the reason they were protesting, it was a general strike because cost of living was too high.
Mm-hmm.
And France was helping the French interior with lowering costs on certain things like gasoline, lowering food prices, and I think there was even stimulus money that went out to people. And the people in Guadeloupe were like, we deserve that. We are
Yeah.
French. And the French protest hard, and the French colonies protest hard.
The
And
French are very good at protesting.
they're very good at protesting. And you know what? It was effective. Because
Yeah,
those
they get shit done.
longshoremen, yeah, they put my boat in the water, but you better believe it wasn't until after they had their demands met.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can learn a lot from our neighbors in the Caribbean. And I think in the Caribbean as a whole, we could be a very powerful force if we talk amongst the islands.
Yes.
We need to have more solidarity with Cuba than we have with the United States.
100% agree.
We need to have more solidarity with Antigua than we have with England.
Definitely agree.
And a lot of this, it's going to come out of young people because we have something which past generations just simply didn't happen to have, which is the internet. We're able to communicate with people around the world and we're able to
Like this
find that
podcast.
solidarity. Right, like this podcast, exactly. And we don't necessarily need to be, waiting on the mail. And we're an island, but we're not an island. No,
Mhm.
nobody, no man's an island. Everything that's going on globally, these billionaires hiding their wealth, these wars going on in the Middle East, it all affects us. You can't raise the tide one part of the world. You can't have the ice caps melt in the North Pole and have that not affect the tropical waters of the Caribbean.
Correct.
It's all connected, even if we don't see those connections. This is the first time we have ever had a genocide that's been live streamed. So there's really no excuse to say that you didn't know. There's really no excuse to look away from it. It's a choice. And if you're telling yourself that, like, oh, I'm just one person, or oh, we're just one small island, we're one small country, I mean, that only really helps the oppressor. If you look around, if you start asking what you can do, you can find solutions. And it's good to just kind of check in with yourself, do the research. Don't look away even when it's difficult. Look at what's going on. I mean, what's going on right now in the Congo, what's going on in Sudan. There are these global struggles. All of us have smartphones in the BVI. Those
Mm-hmm.
smartphones are built with raw materials and resources stripped from the Congo, and literal children are dying. They're forced to be soldiers and they're forced to kill other kids because we want these new phones.
Mm-hmm.
So use that phone to look up what's going on in the Congo. I think it's our responsibility to be informed of everything going on locally within the Caribbean, but then also to have a good mind for what's going on globally, because it does affect all of us. And if you allow yourself to get that information, if you allow yourself to be outraged, then naturally you're going to start looking for what you can do. And once you start looking for what you can do, you're on the right path. You will find ways that you.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Okay, so to move things along, I want to ask you about what actually led up to you being released. Specifically, did the Virgin Islands government step in any way to assist you with your release?
Nah, man. The U.S. government barely fucking stepped in. Yeah, no, so I was traveling with my U.S. passport, thinking that was going to be effective. It was not. Our consulate didn't see us for like 3 or 4 days. When they did come to see us, they essentially were just trying to push us to sign those confessional papers, which we refused to do. They said they couldn't help us out when we said that we hadn't seen lawyers, we hadn't been given showers, anything like that. I showed them, I had marks on my ankles and on my wrists from where I was bleeding from the cuffs being too tight. I showed them that. They were like, oh, yeah, it looks bad. I'm like, you're not going to take a picture? You're not going to follow up with this? Literally, the only good thing I got from them was a pin, which I stole from them, so I could get a letter out. I mean, aside from that, nah, even when we got to Jordan, because that's the other thing is like the Israelis were really showing off that they largely control the states. Like, I don't know what kind of blackmail they got on them, but they definitely run the thing because other countries sent airplanes in, took their people out. Others forced the Israelis to fly their people back home as they have to do by law. Not the U.S. citizens. They drove us to Jordan and dropped us off at the border in a bus. Like they're like,
Wow.
okay, you've been deported now. And then our ambassador in Jordan, this fucking white lady who doesn't even speak Arabic well, she literally came by, told us, like, gave us a list of phone numbers that we couldn't call because none of us had phones, and she said she was not our babysitter. And we were like, bruh. Thankfully, though, the organization of the Global Smooth Flotilla, GSF, they were really on top of things. And so they arranged everything with local volunteers in Jordan. We went to a hotel that was run by a Palestinian Jordanian activist. They had like a big buffet for us. Like we immediately felt, actually taken care of, actually supported. The Virgin Islands government? Nah, I didn't necessarily like let them know that I was going out on this. Everything was kept hush hush for a while, especially me being one of the captains. We kept everything kind of closed off. I really didn't even have friends knowing until we were like less, like 200 miles from Gaza, because
Mm.
that's when we really wanted the pressure of people. So we wanted folks like watching us at that point. But yeah, no, so I hadn't reached out to the Virgin Islands for support. I kind of thought that the U.S. would be more helpful. They were not. But I was definitely feeling that support, if not from the government, from the local community. As soon as I got out and I got back and I saw the messages, the kind words from people, that was a massive help. just, mentally, just to my psyche coming back. And yeah, I mean, a lot of people were telling me either they're in the BVI and they've been following this issue for a long time and they're really happy and proud to see that a Virgin Islanders is going and doing something. Or I would get the other message of, yeah, I didn't realize this was going on. Like, thanks for bringing my attention to this. I would hear about Gaza, I would hear about, the Middle East, but I didn't know what was actually happening. And because of you, I started researching. And it's like, yeah, that's, if that's the least we could do, at least it's something. Thankfully, though, we were fairly effective because when we were in Jordan, we got in the taxi, and the taxi driver told us that many families, his included, were able to fish for 2 days because the Israeli Navy was so distracted with us. So that was like, yeah, we all started fucking weeping in this taxi because that, we wanted hungry people to be fed. That was the whole idea. And knowing that as well, knowing that we tied up, I mean, they sent as many people as they could. They had to take 600 people out of reserves to catch all of us. And so then you realize also the closest boat that we got, it got like 20 miles off the coast. So
That's
if we
really
had a
close.
few more boats, we would have actually made it to that shoreline, despite the entire might of the Zionist entity trying to stop us. So when you look at it like that, it's like, okay, well, if we had a few more boats, so then, okay, we need a few more sailors. I know a place that has boats and sailors. And, sometimes all
Yeah.
you need is that extra little push. So, definitely be on the lookout. There will be more flotillas going. I believe the Thousand Madeleines are planning one for maybe November. It's a little rough at that time. And I know the Global Samud, they're planning one for April. So, if anybody's interested in doing actual direct action, you should know it is dangerous. There's a big risk involved, but it's worth it. It's 100% worth it. And if anybody's looking to try and help out right now, 'cause what led me into this was just months and months of frustration, just sitting and being like, I want to do something. And you feel like you're just hitting your head against the wall. But then eventually an opportunity comes. And when you already have all that force behind you of saying, I want to do something, I want to do something, then you're able to act on it. I think that's also why it was very much not a question for me, is for so long I had been looking for an outlet to all this energy. And then finally the opportunity came up. I wasn't going to question it, or I wasn't going to back off from it just because of, a little bit of danger. And if anybody's wanting to help out right now, if you've been frustrated, if you're hearing this podcast and you're like, I wish I was there, I wish I had done something, I wish I was doing something right now, I got good news. The West Bank needs people. There are olive harvests going on right now, and they need just eyes on the ground. They need people who are not from Palestine, people with different passports, different governments, different people watching them, to literally just stay on the farms and just watch and just record with their phones if these Zionist settlers come to try and burn shit down. Again, it's dangerous. There's no way to do a direct action for there to not be risk.
Correct.
And that's not for everybody. And nobody should in any way feel pressured, because if you put yourself in that situation, and you might become a liability. So like definitely you should already have experience with stressful situations. It's not for everybody. If you can do it, if you want to do it, I commend you for looking into it. Otherwise, look for other ways that you can help out. And again, I'll stress boycotting, just choosing where you spend your money, choosing how you spend your money. That's one of the biggest votes that you can cast. So there's
Yeah.
always different ways for people to help out, as long as they're looking for ways.
So now that you've been freed or anything, has anyone from the Virgin Islands government reached out at all?
I don't think so. I mean, at least not in any kind of official capacity. Because I know I'm friends with people who are within the government who maybe like on a personal note in a DM have said, kind things, but not in any kind of official way. BVI not trying to get my plane ticket back there. Nothing. I'm stuck in New York right now.
Fair enough. It's a little bit disappointing. I would have hoped that they would have reached out in some sort of way, but it is what it is.
Yeah,
All right,
I'll also say I am still catching up on emails and things. So I'll let you know if I was wrong about that. But as far as I know,
fair enough. All right then, Dane. So this has been a very informative conversation, and I'm glad you're okay and well, and you're able to tell your story and also bring awareness to this cause. This is the part of the podcast where I can give you a chance to promote either like your social medias or anything that you want to bring more awareness to before we wrap up. So go ahead, floor is yours.
yeah, sure. So I'll definitely I'll look at those links to send you that people can check out. One just helps you know who to boycott. The next one is going to be for anybody interested in volunteering in the West Bank right now. And then I'll also say I'm going to be doing a fundraiser in a couple days for the Gaza Soup Kitchen. If you're looking for a good place to send funds to, Gaza Soup Kitchen. Yeah, you can follow me if you want. Your boy Dane on Instagram, YABOI_Dane. Right now, it's mostly stuff for the Palestinian cause. Yeah, I mean, main thing, if you want to help, nothing can stop you, just do the research. As long as your intention's there, you can find a way to help. And also, there are many causes out there. Figure out what's going on in your local community, Figure out the best way that we can help our neighbors, And from there, just expand as much as you can.
All right, man, that's beautiful. Thank you for making time out to come on the show and talk about these things. I appreciate you. Keep fighting the good fight, brother.
Thanks, Bunchy. Appreciate you, man.